White plays pawn to d4. Black plays pawn to d5. White plays pawn to c4. Black plays pawn to c4. White plays knight to f3. Black plays knight to f6. White plays pawn to e3. Black plays pawn to e6. White plays bishop to c4. Black plays pawn to c5. White plays king to g1. Black plays bishop to e7. White plays pawn to c5. Black plays queen to d1. White plays rook to d1. Black plays bishop to c5. White plays knight to c3. Black plays king to g8. White plays bishop to e2. Black plays knight to c6. White plays pawn to a3. Black plays pawn to b6. White plays pawn to b4. Black plays bishop to e7. White plays pawn to e4. Black plays rook to d8. White plays rook to d8. Black plays knight to d8. White plays pawn to e5. Black plays knight to e8. White plays bishop to g5. Black plays king to f8. White plays rook to d1. Black plays pawn to h6. White plays bishop to e3. Black plays bishop to b7. White plays knight to d4. Black plays knight to c7. White plays pawn to f4. Black plays pawn to a5. White plays pawn to a5. Black plays rook to a5. White plays knight to c2. Black plays king to e8. White plays pawn to 4. Black plays bishop to c5. White plays bishop to b5. Black plays knight to b5. White plays pawn to b5. Black plays pawn to f6. White plays pawn to f6. Black plays pawn to f6. White plays bishop to c5. Black plays pawn to c5. White plays king to f2. Black plays knight to f7. White plays rook to 1. Black plays rook to 1. White plays knight to 1. Black plays bishop to d5. White plays knight to c2. Black plays knight to d6. White plays knight to e3. Black plays bishop to b7. White plays knight to g4. Black plays pawn to f5. White plays knight to e5. Black plays king to d8. White plays knight to d3. Black plays pawn to c4. White plays knight to e5. Black plays king to c7. White plays king to e3. Black plays bishop to g2. White plays king to d4. Black plays bishop to f1. White plays king to c5.